So hi, my name is Misko Hevery. I am the tech lead for the Angular project here at Google. And I want to take you through our 2017 roadmap so that we can talk about what we are working on next. So a little bit of background for somebody who might not be familiar with Angular. We are a framework. Actually, we have kind of evolved into a platform, and I'll talk about it in a bit. The key of the key philosophy to Angular is that we are trying to be very, very declarative. So as much of the UI you can push into declarative context as you can. You can think of it as we can extend the vocabulary of the HTML either through custom elements or what we call directives, which is just extra attributes. And these things get new behavior. One of the key things about Angular 2, it's kind of amusing to watch that everybody's kind of doing rewrites. You know, we have a lot of empathy for these projects because we have just gone through it. And it's important to be able to innovate. So, but getting back to the story, one of the key things of Angular 2 was to do a DOM independence, or rather we're just calling it Angular. And the other thing we've taken to front end is dependency injection. And dependency injection is very popular in the backend systems, but it's kind of new in the JavaScript world. And we have a very powerful way of kind of assembling your application. The key to it is that instead of thinking about how to put the application together, the DI kind of puts the app for you. So most of the Google internal apps and many of our external ones are built on Angular. So internally, we have Angular powers our apps for example, finance, HR, staffing, bug tracking, performance reviews, content resource management for our sales team, and even data center planning. Those are all internal apps, so you can't really see them. But externally, Angular is used in AdWords, DoubleClick, search teams, Google Data Studio, Google Express, Analytics, Google Cloud Platform, and a whole bunch more. So we are quite popular both internally at Google and also externally by non-Google projects as well. And we have over this, have gotten a lot of knowledge about how big apps and big teams work together. And so many things that went into Angular version 2 was about how do you make the teams work together even better. So the kind of the focus was to take the declarative syntax even a notch further. What you can declare in components. And because of that, we were actually gain DOM independence, which means that Angular can run without DOM. It can actually run in environments which don't have DOM, like on a server. It can run and render into other targets, such as React Native or NativeScript, or you can run on web workers, and then send the UI back across the wire to the UI side for rendering. So this is pretty cool because it allows you to really think about it in a general way. The other thing is that we are very designer friendly. We made sure that the HTML and CSS and the code are separated, and the API for assembling it can be done in HTML, so that you have teams that are developers as well as teams that are UI designers, and that are not stepping on each other's toes when they're building. The other thing we wanted to focus on is making sure that large teams can work together. And the short answer over there is that you need to have a good type system. In other words, you need to make sure that everybody on the team calls the same object the same way. And you can reason about it in mathematical terms rather than everybody has a slightly different point of view. And that enables things like tooling, fancy IDEs, renaming, refactoring, all kinds of fun stuff that large teams love. We also taken on ES6 decorators, which is a form of declarative way of specifying how to assemble the application inside of your imperative code inside of JavaScript. And the key over here is that we really are focusing on how to make sure that large teams can work together. We have teams that have 100 people working on a single web application, and we want to make sure that that is sustainable over long term. So the one thing I wanted to point out is that AngularJS version 1 was essentially a framework. You kind of dropped it in the UI and off you went, and you could have built your application. Angular 2, we wanted to go a step further, and we wanted to turn it into a platform. So rather than just focusing about the framework itself, we wanted to focus on the whole ecosystem end to end. And so I wanted to show you a couple of these things, how this kind of looks like. So at the bottom, we're focusing on tooling. So we have a ahead of time compilation, which means that we can look at all this declarative content that you created, both in terms of HTML and also in terms of the annotations inside your source code, and we can generate the code that assembles the application, runs the application, etc. So that when we ship the application to the browser, we actually are not shipping much of the framework, we're just shipping the generated code. And our kind of hope long term is that we actually will generate all of the framework away, where the only thing we're shipping to the application is shipping to the browser is the application. The other thing we have is language services. You can think of it as a service that runs and kind of looks at your source code and provides APIs to the IDEs. So when you have an IDE, or even if it's something extreme like WebStorm, or something as simple as VI, not that I'm saying the VI is simple, we allow you to have plugins that basically says, my cursor is at this particular location, what is the type at this location? Now this has been around forever for source code, but it's kind of new for HTML and templates. So you can do the same thing for templating information, etc. We have tooling such as Protractor and Karma that allows you to run end-to-end as well as unit tests for your code base. And Angular is very unit test centric. We really make sure that we design it in a form that is unit testable and as well as end-to-end testable. And finally, we have a command line interface that allows you to very quickly put together a project and scaffold everything so that you can, from day one, have all of this stuff set up for testing, modification builds, and so on and so forth. Now, on top of that is what classically has been considered a framework, which is this idea of components, data binding, dependency injections, and zones. Zones is actually not part of Angular itself. It's a separate project which can be actually used by other frameworks or other libraries. It allows you to asynchronously track the browser, and allows you to kind of give frameworks a programmatic API into seeing what's actually happening in the browser, so they know what time is a good time to do rendering, when the animations are done, and so forth. And on top of that is really the thing that completes it, which is what are the libraries that we also ship with Angular. And so we focus on material design. So that's a set of components that you can use out of the box with Angular. We have a router, form, internationalization, localization. In other words, we really are focusing to make sure that you have an end-to-end solution for your application. Everything from running it on a desktop as a web application, or inside of Electron, or running it on mobile, or progressive web apps, or doing it something completely different, like for example NativeScript, which renders into native components. All of these particular use cases are covered. So this is why we call it a platform, because it's not just a single thing like a framework for building something, but rather it's a holistic view on all of the pieces. So now we're about to release version 4 in kind of a March-April timeframe. And even though it's a big number upgrade from 2 to 4, this is the incremental improvement. So this isn't a rewrite or anything of that sort. This is a backwards compatible release where we add new features in a way which is backwards compatible. So it should be a pretty straightforward upgrade without any surprises for most people. So the kind of things we're focusing on is smaller and faster. What we have kind of done in the past is we really focused on speed, but it turns out that if you focus too much on speed, you need to balance things out. So we now are balancing it out with making sure that it's smaller. Now there's two ways to think about it. One is, as application gains more components, there's a certain rate at which the code size grows. And then there's another one, which is if you do a smallest possible app, how tiny is your application? So currently on the simple Hello World app is about 22K. We're working hard to get it down to under 10K. So you can think of it as the offset that all applications have to pay. And the other one is, the slope of the line, which is as the application gets bigger, how are we going to improve? And the current work we have seems to be that we're improving the slope of the line by about 4x. So the apps that are being generated should be about 4 times smaller as we go forward. And in the process, we're going to be actually getting better in the first time to render, which is kind of an important thing that the users care about, from the point that they click on an app to the point that the first render comes up and they can become interactive. So that gets being improved as well. the other thing we are focusing on is make sure that we have a beautiful debugging story. And so because we generate code, when you get an exception inside of the generated code, we attach source map to that particular generated code. And we make sure that the code and the source maps are done in such a way that when an exception happens, the source map can point you directly into the HTML file that had the binding that's causing this particular exception. So as you get a stack trace, and then you just click on it, and voila, it takes you to the index, whatever the HTML file for that particular component is, and you can see where the issue is happening. The other advantage of all this stuff is because it's generated code, you can place breakpoints, and you can actually see as the template is being rendered going forward. We're releasing the Angular CLI version 1. This is the command line interface for getting yourself up and running and building applications fast. We're also thinking about, that's later. So going forward, we're going to be upgrading the command line interface about every 6 months or so, kind of being in sync with the core of Angular itself. We are also taking over Angular Universal. So our community has done an awesome job bootstrapping Universal. Universal is a way for us to run Angular on a server and then render the HTML so that it can be fed to search engine crawlers, like for SEO optimization, or for mobile devices so that you can get a super fast first-time render and going forward. Angular team is going to bring this particular project internally, so it's now going to be under Angular GitHub domain. And we're going to be focusing on doing lots of improvements in it. So the things to look forward is that you're going to be able to bootstrap multiple applications on a page. We're going to have test components, will be universal compatible, and we'll get you a fine-grained control over the rendering process so you can manipulate components, and we're going to vastly improve the docs as well. So look forward to having lots of fun stuff here in this area. And finally, we've really focused on language services. And this is the idea that as you're working on your template and you hit Control Spacebar, you want it to have a completion. And this is pretty simple to do for simple stuff like a Hello World app, but it gets pretty complicated quickly when you do things like ng-for or ng-if, in which case you need to correctly flow the type information from, you're passing in a list of users, but inside of ng-for, you have to realize that you don't have a list of users, you now have a specific user, right? So user.firstname is different than users.firstname. And so correctly flowing all this type information, following the TypeScript semantics, is going to really improve the experience for it. And so not just improving the experience for the developer, but also think about all of the improved type checking capabilities that you will get. So not only will you be able to fully statically type check all of your source code, you're going to also be able to fully type check all of the templates that you have inside of your system as well, and all the expressions inside of them. Okay, so this is about the future. So this is kind of the past of how we got here. Looking forward to the future, version 4. First of all, lots of disclaimers. This is just what we're thinking about. It's kind of preliminary thinking. It's kind of a drafts in my head. This is non-binding. Your mileage might vary, or whatever you need to say that to realize that this is kind of just what we're thinking about going forward. So version 5, that's kind of thinking about version September or October. Again, this is an incremental update to the platform. This isn't a rewrite or anything of that sort, so it's backwards compatible. It should be pretty straightforward. Just upgrade your version number with minimal changes to your source code, and you should be up and running on it. The things we're looking forward to support is AMP, which is the super fast rendering of the system of the page, and content management systems. Many CMS systems would like to use Angular, and so we would like to have better support for that as well. Experiment scaffolding. This is a kind of a thing that usually is applicable to large projects. The issue there is that you want to have your stable product. You also want to have your next product, which has certain features for your beta users or your dev users, and you slowly roll out the features onto next and next bigger and bigger set of users as you have. And the thing that's important is that your beta users or your trusted tester users shouldn't be, they see new features, but the general people shouldn't be able to go into the source code and even see the presence of these new features that are coming down the pipeline. And so this is for experimental kind of scaffolding, so that you can do these kinds of features and you can have a single code base which allows you to build multiple distributions, one for your trusted testers, one for your general population, and so on. The other thing we're kind of focused now is that we're focusing on tree shaking. Currently, the tree shaking is not based on types information. As soon as you have type information in the system, you can do a lot better job tree shaking things. And so in the future, expect the Angular apps will get even smaller as we get more efficient at figuring out which things are or not needed for the application. So not only tree shaking the whole classes, but also going into individual methods on the classes and saying, this method doesn't get called and so on, and removing that as well. Finally, we're thinking also about CLI version 2. The big change over there is that we would like to have a programmatic API so that IDEs, not just that you have to go to the command line to start new projects, but like IDEs can go in and programmatically ask CLI to create a new component, create a new route, set up a scaffolding for testing and so on. And this is going to greatly improve the tooling that's available for developers that can, like if you use WebStorm or Microsoft Visual Studio, you'll have all the benefits of CLI directly inside of your IDEs. And also thinking about service workers and web workers. So we already have a case where we have a kind of an experimental case of web workers, because we can run Angular in a web worker and then push everything over to the UI thread to run. Same kind of an idea with service workers, so that we can kind of pre-boot the application, have it running in the background, collect data, so that when you're ready to click on it, it will come up to the UI super fast, and you can start interacting it with a fresh set of data. And the famous purple, made popular by Polymer team, making sure that as we download resources to the application, we do it in such a way that we maximize, time to interaction for the user and time to being able to see the first page for the user. So that's kind of a summary of where we're heading, where we've been, and where we're heading. I'm happy to take questions if you have some.
Cool. Thank you so much, Misko. Can we look forward to more Material 2 components in the upcoming release?
Yes, Material. Yes, we're building. We have a good set of material design components team is built up, and they're pushing them out as soon as they can. I don't know the details as to when things are coming up, but I know we have pretty aggressive schedules, and we're hitting them.
CMS support, can you say more about that?
Right, so content management systems are applications that allow you to kind of like your WordPress and so on, which allow you to add components dynamically to the page. And because Angular is in some ways is globally optimized so that you compile the application in a single shot, we're going to make it easier so that tools can dynamically assemble applications inside of it. Now, this is already possible in Angular today. This is just removing lots of rough edges to make it even more enjoyable for people to do.
When can we expect the final release of the CLI?
I think the CLI is scheduled for the release at the same time as Angular 4, so in the next few months, think March, April kind of time frame, but I'm not exactly sure.
Will Angular 5 have backwards compatibility?
Yes, so I've been trying to stress that, and I'm going to repeat that again. It is somewhere, which means that we are fully backwards compatible. So Angular, obviously between Angular 1 and Angular 2, there was a significant change. But going forward, Angular 2 to Angular 4 to Angular 5, we are putting a lot of efforts to making sure that for the most part, you can just upgrade it and nothing should break. The reason we are doing version changes is because we are introducing big things in there, such as different rendering pipeline. Now, the API-wise, this rendering pipeline should be identical. You should just be able to upgrade it all of a sudden. You are faster. But it is possible that with such things that you will have slight surprises. And so by having a proper version number upgrade, people can know that things might have unintentionally checked, in which case it's a bug and we should fix it. But because more source code have changed, we give you a big version number to kind of be aware and do a little more QA. But we fully expect these things to be backwards compatible.
Very cool. Well, there are a few more questions, but we don't have time to get to all of them. So come back for JS.Interactive, which is happening in a few weeks, and it'll be a more panel-like discussion where Misko can answer all your amazing questions. And thank you so much, Misko.
Happy to be here.
Hey there. Do you use Angular? Do you like fun in the sun? And how do you feel about boats? If you're nodding yes, then come join us on NG Cruise to learn more about Angular while on a fabulous Caribbean cruise. Check out ngcruise.com for speaker lineup, workshop details, and to book your spot today.